Okay, so today we're going to try to unpack what's going on in Ukraine. It's
Yeah.
a very complicated situation, but we have a lot of interesting sources
We do.
that seem to be suggesting that this war could be coming to an end.
Right.
And so that's kind of what we want to look at today.
Absolutely.
And so we're seeing a lot of discussion of ending the war, but there's a lot of disagreement
Yeah.
on what that would look like.
Of course.
And that really seems to be the heart of this.
That's the central question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody would love to see the war end.
Yeah.
But the question is, what are the terms?
Right.
And what does it mean for Ukraine and really for the world?
Well, especially because this is all coming on the heels of this 90-minute phone call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin.
Right.
And it seems like the readouts that we're getting are suggesting that they both want the war to come to an end.
Yeah, they both expressed a desire to see the conflict resolved.
Right. But of course, neither of them is particularly clear about,
Right. How do they envision that? What does that look like?
yeah, what that looks like.
What are those terms? And I think that's where things get a little bit dicey.
Well, and then you have Pete Hegseth, who is the defense secretary over in Germany.
Right.
And he's making some pretty significant public statements.
Yes, very much so.
And so he's saying that it's unrealistic to think that Ukraine could go back to its pre-war borders.
Right. And that would include Crimea, of course.
Yeah.
Which was annexed in 2014 by Russia.
Right.
And this has really stirred up a lot of controversy because some people are interpreting this as a signal
Yeah.
that a potential U.S. administration under Trump might be willing to basically accept Russia's territorial gains, which, of course, aligns very well with Putin's long-term goals.
And that's certainly a lot of what a lot of the sources that we're looking at are saying is that this is, basically giving Putin exactly what he wants.
Right.
But it's not quite that black and white either.
Well, and that's the thing. Is
Yeah.
It's more nuanced, I think, than maybe some of the headlines are letting on.
Yeah.
I mean, we have, I think it was David Ignatius's
Yeah.
column that pointed out that Hegseth's speech also contained elements that were actually somewhat reassuring to Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not as if he was just, saying you're done, you're finished.
Right. It's not a total abandonment of Ukraine.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that that's, one of the things that we see a lot in these sources is that this idea of like a nuanced position.
Yes.
And so it's very difficult to know what this actually means for Ukraine.
It is.
In the long run.
Well, so let's unpack that a little bit. This idea that Hegseth is putting out there about it's unrealistic for Ukraine to regain all its territory.
Right.
Is he just saying the quiet part out loud?
Yeah.
Is this
Yeah.
the thing that everybody's thinking but nobody's willing to say?
Right. Is this just the reality of the situation?
Well, I mean, there's an argument to be made that, look, we've had years of fighting.
Yeah.
A lot of blood has been shed. And the reality on the ground is that it might be very difficult, if not impossible,
Yeah.
to fully restore Ukraine's pre-2014 borders.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you could say, yeah, he's just acknowledging a tough reality.
Right. But
But
the point that one
yeah.
of our sources is making is that the problem is not the assessment necessarily.
Yeah.
It's the fact that this is being said publicly
Right.
before any negotiations have even begun.
Right before Ukraine is even really at the table.
Yeah, and without Ukraine's full participation.
Right.
And so it's kind of like you're dictating surrender terms before anyone has even sat down to talk.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
very different from saying, well, privately, we assess that it's going to be tough
Right.
to get all of that territory back
Right.
versus we are publicly declaring that this is off the table.
Right.
That fundamentally shifts the landscape.
Well, and so the idea then becomes, if we're going to end this war, we need to have some kind of security arrangement for Ukraine.
Absolutely.
And so the idea that keeps coming up is
Right.
this demilitarized zone.
Yes.
What would that actually look like?
So the concept is basically you establish a buffer zone
Okay.
along the current line of control in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that this zone would be demilitarized, meaning no troops,
Yeah.
no heavy weapons.
Okay.
And then ideally you'd have some kind of international peacekeeping force in there
Okay.
to monitor it and to prevent further clashes.
Okay. So you'd have this zone, and then on either side of the zone, you'd have.
You'd have Ukrainian forces on one side, Russian forces on the other.
Okay.
But the idea is that this zone itself would be kind of a neutral space.
Right. Okay.
Now, the big caveat here, and this is where I think a lot of the questions arise, is that Hegseth was very clear in saying that these peacekeeping forces would likely not include any American troops.
Right. He said no American boots on the ground.
Right. And it wouldn't be a NATO mission.
Okay. So no NATO.
Right. Yeah. This is very much, I think, a reflection of this potential America First approach to security guarantees.
So from Ukraine's perspective, then, is that an acceptable security guarantee?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
I mean, I think on the one hand, you could say, okay, well, at least there's some kind of buffer.
Yeah.
At least there's an international presence that could potentially deter further aggression.
Right.
But the big question mark, and our sources really highlight this, is what level of support would these peacekeepers actually have? Yeah,
what if they get attacked? What happens?
Exactly. Yeah. What if Russia decides to violate the DMZ?
Right.
What happens then? Would the U.S. actually step in? Would other NATO countries step in?
Right.
Or is this kind of, a fig leaf,
a
symbolic gesture?
So it seems like this is a pattern.
It is.
In U.S. foreign policy, right? It's fascinating, isn't it?
Like this idea of trying to improve relations with Russia.
Yeah.
I mean, our sources point out that Trump would be the fifth
consecutive president
to try to do this.
Yep. And they all seem to fail.
Yeah, they haven't exactly had a great track record.
No, not really.
Why is that? Why do you think this keeps happening?
Well, I think it points to a fundamental mismatch in worldviews and strategic goals.
Okay.
I mean, it's not so much about individual leaders.
Yeah.
It's really about these deep-seated national interests.
Yeah.
And just fundamentally different ways of looking at the world.
Right.
So in Trump's case, for example, he came in saying he wanted better relations.
Right.
But it was always kind of overshadowed by the Russia investigation, the whole election interference thing.
The Helsinki meeting.
The Helsinki summit, which was highly controversial.
Yeah.
And ultimately, even his own administration took a more adversarial stance at times. Right. They provided lethal aid to Ukraine.
Exactly. So you have this kind of push and pull.
Right.
And I think the lesson from history is that these attempts at rapprochement often just collide with these very real geopolitical realities.
And it's interesting that the source brings up this parallel to the Balkans in 1998.
Yes.
Where you had European peacekeeping forces that were there.
Right.
And that eventually led to U.S. involvement.
That's right.
So could we be seeing something similar here?
It's a precedent to keep in mind.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the context is different, but it does show that these seemingly limited peacekeeping operations can sometimes escalate. If the situation deteriorates or if major powers feel that their interests are threatened.
So let's talk about the different perspectives on the war itself.
Sure.
Because, we see this viewpoint, especially among some conservatives and people who were kind of skeptical
of getting involved in the first place.
Right. They were saying, this was a mistake.
Right.
This is going to be a disaster.
Exactly.
And now they're saying, see, we told you so.
Yep. Vindication.
Yeah. So what's the argument there?
The core argument is that the level of U.S. engagement was disproportionate.
Okay.
And that it's actually prolonged the conflict.
Okay.
They argue that Ukraine was unlikely to win decisively.
Yeah.
Particularly when it comes to retaking all of that lost territory.
Right.
So their view is that the best course of action would have been to push for de-escalation and a negotiated settlement, even if that meant Ukraine making some territorial concessions.
Right.
They see that as the most pragmatic way to end the bloodshed.
Okay, so get out while you can.
Yeah, cut your losses, essentially.
But then the counter to that is what one of our sources really pushes us to think about.
Yes.
Is what would have happened back in February of 2022.
Right, at the very beginning of the invasion.
Yeah, if Ukraine hadn't resisted, if they hadn't gotten all of this support.
Right, what if they had just folded?
What if everyone had just said, oh, well, too bad.
And I think the scenario they're painting is one of much greater instability.
Okay.
They argue that a swift Russian victory would have emboldened Putin and potentially other authoritarian leaders to engage in similar acts of aggression.
Right.
I mean, imagine if Russia had just rolled over Ukraine and installed a puppet regime.
Yeah.
What signal would that send to China?
Right, to other countries that might be thinking of doing something similar.
So the fact that Ukraine did resist and that the West did provide support has not only weakened Russia militarily and economically, but it's also shown that there's a cost to this kind of aggression.
Right.
It's a deterrent.
So even the stalemate, then, is a better outcome.
Well, yeah. I mean, even though it's a stalemate, Ukraine still controls a significant portion of its territory.
Yeah.
And that can be seen as a testament to their resistance.
Okay, so then what about Zelensky? What is his position on all of this?
Well, it seems like, based on our sources, that he may be becoming more open to exploring some kind of negotiated settlement.
Okay, so he's moving away from we have to take back every inch of territory.
I think there's a recognition that that might not be feasible.
Okay.
And I think there are a few factors at play here.
Yeah.
One is just the human cost of the war.
Yeah.
I mean, Ukraine has suffered heavy casualties. They're facing manpower shortages.
And the sources that we're looking at are really highlighting the manpower issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of long-term support.
Yeah.
I mean, how long is the U.S. going to keep sending billions of dollars?
Right.
How long are European countries going to keep sending weapons? I think there's some uncertainty there.
And I think the potential for a change in U.S. policy.
And that's the big wild card, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if Trump wins the election, who knows what happens to U.S. support?
So how does this all compare to what Putin wanted at the beginning of the war?
Yeah.
Because it seemed like he was going for a lot more than just holding on to the Donbass.
I mean, his initial goals were much more expansive.
Right.
I mean, he wanted to seize control of a huge chunk of Ukraine.
Yeah.
He wanted to overthrow the government in Kyiv.
He was talking about denazification.
Right, all this talk about denazification.
Yeah.
He basically wanted to turn Ukraine into a puppet state.
Like Belarus?
Yeah, like Belarus or Georgia.
Yeah.
So the key point that our sources are making is that this potential Trump plan doesn't really give Putin all of that.
Right.
I mean, Zelensky is still in power.
Yeah.
And a large part of Ukraine is still free.
Right.
So it's not a complete victory for Putin.
So what about the EU and NATO?
Yes, the long-standing question.
Because those have been kind of dangling out there.
Right, since the 1990s, really.
Yeah, like these carrots for Ukraine.
Right, the promise of eventual integration with the West.
And so how does that play into this whole situation?
Well, it's interesting because Hegseth was very dismissive.
Yeah, he was very clear about NATO.
Yeah, he said NATO is off the table.
Yeah.
But he didn't really mention the EU.
Right, so the EU is still a possibility.
It's still a possibility.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth remembering that the 2007 NATO summit, where Ukraine and Georgia were told they would eventually become members, that's seen by some as a major provocation to Russia.
Right.
And a contributing factor to the current conflict.
Yeah.
So the EU question, I think, remains a potential incentive for Ukraine.
Right.
It offers them economic integration, political integration with the West.
So one of the things that I found most concerning in the sources that we're looking at is this idea that the U.S. could end up negotiating a settlement with Putin.
Right.
And basically sidelining Zelensky.
Essentially cutting Ukraine out of the process.
Yeah, like Ukraine is not even at the table for its own fate.
Which is highly problematic.
Yeah.
I mean, it raises serious questions about sovereignty.
Yeah, what does it say about national sovereignty if a country can't even decide its own future?
Well, and our sources make this really stark contrast between the willingness to make concessions to Putin without Ukraine's full involvement and the much tougher stance that they take towards other actors like Hamas, for example.
Yeah.
So it's like there's this double standard and it raises questions about, what are the underlying principles here?
So let's say hypothetically that the war ends and Russia keeps the 20% of Ukraine that it currently controls.
Right.
Is that a win for Putin?
Well, it's not the total victory that he was initially aiming for,
right?
But it's still a significant territorial gain achieved through military force.
And it sets a bad precedent.
Exactly. And that's the big concern that our sources highlight.
Yeah.
Is this the end, or is this just a pause?
Yeah.
Does Putin just regroup?
Right. What if he just waits a few years and then goes for more?
What's to stop him?
Yeah.
Especially if there isn't a strong security agreement in place for the rest of Ukraine.
Right.
And if the U.S. is seen as unreliable.
Yeah. And that goes back to that whole
guarantee
question.
Full circle.
Yeah.
Because if Ukraine doesn't feel secure,
Yeah.
if they don't feel like they have the backing of the West,
Yeah.
then they might be tempted to make more concessions.
Well, and then there's this whole argument that
Yeah.
Trump has made about moral equivalence.
Right.
You know, he says there's been too much death on both sides.
Too much bloodshed.
Yeah.
Time to end it.
And I guess the problem there, from Ukraine's perspective...
Well, the problem is that
ignores the fact
that ignores the aggressor. Yeah, that they didn't start this.
Right.
Russia started this.
It's a war of aggression.
Yeah.
Ukraine is defending itself.
And one of our sources said, Ukraine would be happy
It's exactly.
to see the casualties end if Russia would just leave.
Right, if Russia just went back to its own territory.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
So historically speaking,
Yeah.
the U.S. has settled for less
Mm-hmm.
than total victory in certain conflicts.
Yeah, we're not always the shining beacon
Yeah.
of victory.
Right. So what are some of the examples that the sources bring up?
Well, they talk about Korea, for example.
Okay.
The division of the Korean Peninsula.
Right.
We never really achieved reunification.
Yeah.
Vietnam, obviously,
Yeah.
where we ended up withdrawing.
Right.
And even the first Gulf War in 91,
Yeah.
we didn't go all the way to Baghdad.
Right. We kicked Saddam out of Kuwait.
Right. We achieved a limited objective,
Yeah.
and then we left. So it seems like there's this possibility
It does seem like...
that a spheres of influence approach
Yeah.
is gaining traction.
That's the term that keeps coming up.
Yeah, like, Ukraine is in Russia's sphere.
Yeah.
Taiwan is in China's sphere.
It's a very different worldview
Yeah.
from the post-World War II
Right.
U.S.-led order.
So this brings us to the bigger question
Yes.
of America's role in the world.
The big one.
Yeah, what is our role?
What are we doing out there?
Yeah, why should we be involved in these things?
Why are we spending all this money?
Especially when it seems like there's no direct threat.
Yeah. Where's the clear and present danger?
Yeah.
I mean, during the Cold War was obvious.
Right.
Communism was the existential threat.
After 9/11, it was terrorism.
Right, the war on
Yeah.
terror.
Yeah.
So those were easy to sell.
But now it's not so clear.
It's a lot more complicated.
And so it seems like there's a debate, even within a potential Trump administration, about what to do.
There are people like Elbridge Colby,
Yeah.
Michael Anton, who are really focused on China,
Right. They see China as the main threat.
the long-term strategic competitor.
So how does that affect Ukraine?
Well, I think if you prioritize China,
Yeah.
then Ukraine might become less of a priority.
Right.
The argument would be that we need to focus our resources,
Yeah.
our attention on countering China in Asia.
Okay. So then the question becomes...
The big question, is that the right move?
Right. Is that going to make Russia more aggressive?
Yeah. Are we emboldening Russia?
Are we emboldening China
Yeah.
by appearing weak?
Well, and then on top of all of this,
Yeah.
you have to factor in domestic politics.
Of course, always.
Yeah, because that's a huge driver of
Okay.
foreign policy.
I mean, politicians have to get elected.
Right.
They have to answer to voters.
And the things that voters care about
Yeah.
are not always these big geopolitical issues.
No, they're worried about their pocketbooks.
Yeah, they're worried about gas prices,
Yeah.
inflation,
The border.
the border.
Yeah.
These are the things that drive elections.
So how does that all play into this?
Well, it means that there's always this tension
Yeah.
between what might be in the best interests of the country
Yeah.
from a foreign policy perspective and what's politically expedient.
Right.
And I think in the case of Ukraine,
Yeah.
it's clear that public support
Yeah.
is not as strong.
Yeah. As it is for, say, Israel.
Right. I mean, there's not the same level
Yeah.
of kind of emotional attachment.
And part of that might be just this general cynicism.
Yeah, there's a lot of distrust
Yeah.
of government institutions.
Yeah, people are tired.
People are tired of foreign wars. They're
Yeah.
tired of spending money overseas.
Right.
So it makes it very difficult
Yeah.
to build consensus for these long-term commitments.
And so this idea of come home America, that's still out there.
It's still there lurking in the background.
So, wow, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
I mean, this is a really complex situation.
It is.
And it seems like we're at a crossroads.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. There are a lot of potential shifts
Yeah.
coming in U.S. policy.
And not just for Ukraine.
Yeah. This could have ripple effects
Absolutely.
all over the world.
It's about America's role in the world.
Yeah.
What kind of country do we want to be?
Right.
What are our commitments?
Yeah.
Are we willing to defend the international order?
So to sum up for our listeners,
Yeah.
it seems like the big question here is how do we end this war?
Yes.
in a way that's just...
In a way that's sustainable.
Yeah, and that doesn't just lead to another war.
That doesn't embolden other aggressors.
Right.
That doesn't create more instability down the road.
Right.
That's a tough needle to thread.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult.
It is.
But as we've seen today, this is about much more than just Ukraine.
It is. This is about global power.
Yeah.
It's about historical legacies.
Yeah.
It's about domestic politics.
Yeah. It's about everything.
It's all connected.
So here's a final thought for you to consider.
Okay.
Given that the U.S. has historically sometimes settled for less than complete victory,
Right.
and given that this spheres of influence idea seems to be gaining traction, what happens if this war ends and Russia keeps that 20% of Ukraine?
Right. What does that signal?
Yeah, what message does that send to the rest of the world?
China, to Iran, to North Korea, to anyone who's thinking about using force to get what they want.
Yeah, does that mean that we're moving away from this rules-based international order?
It's a big question.
Yeah, and that's something that we all need to think about.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
This is the future of the world we're talking about.
So that's it for the deep dive today.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.
It's been great talking to you.
Likewise.
Bye.
Bye.